99 major wildfires are burning out of control across the United States right now at this very moment, and the country has been pushed to National Preparedness Level 5, the absolute highest tier there is, the level that means every available resource in the nation is committed. More than 5.25 million acres have already burned to the ground, and here's the part that should stop you cold. It is only the 4th of August. That's roughly 138% of the 10-year average, and the fire season doesn't even end until October. The situation has gotten so extreme, so far beyond what American crews can handle alone, that firefighters from Australia and New Zealand have flown to the other side of the planet to help us put it out. And in Spokane, investigators just made an arrest that turns one of these fires from a natural disaster into a crime scene. If you want the full national picture, region by region, with the real numbers and no hype, stay with me and hit subscribe, because I'm tracking this daily and it is changing by the hour. Let me start with the big picture before we zoom in on the specific hotspots, because the scale of the response alone tells you how serious this is. As of this morning, more than 27,000 personnel are deployed on fire lines across the country. That includes hundreds of ground crews, over 1,500 fire engines, and well over 160 helicopters. 26 of what are called Type 1 incident management teams are committed right now, and those are the highest level, most elite wildfire management teams the country has. And yet, despite all of that firepower, the fire is still winning in a lot of places. So the obvious question is, why? How can the most advanced firefighting force on Earth be losing ground? And the answer comes down to one thing. The weather is simply relentless. Let me give you a number that I want you to really sit with. Across California and the inland Northwest, the minimum relative humidity has dropped to somewhere between 3 and 15%. 3% humidity. Think about what that means. That is drier than most deserts. At that level, the vegetation, the grass, the timber, everything becomes essentially explosive fuel. And it's critically dangerous, both for how fast fire spreads and for the safety of the firefighters standing in front of it. On top of that, temperatures at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit are locked in across the interior West. And the culprit behind all of it is something called a thermal trough, which is basically a ribbon of extreme heat sitting right near the surface. It creates a pressure difference that acts like a pump, shoving hot, dry, unstable air straight into fire country. So the atmosphere itself is actively feeding these fires hour after hour. Now let's move to the Pacific Northwest, because this is where the crisis is most severe today. That entire coordination region is at Preparedness Level 5, maximum resource commitment. And here's a statistic that reframes everything. 50 of the nation's 99 uncontained large fires are burning right here in Washington and Oregon alone. Read that again. Half of America's entire wildfire problem at this moment is concentrated in just 2 states. And if you happen to be anywhere in the Spokane, Washington metro area, I need you to pay very close attention right now, because the city is surrounded, and I do not use that word for drama, by 3 separate wildfires burning at the same time. The Old Trails fire is burning just 3 miles to the west of downtown Spokane. The Meadowview fire is about 7 miles to the northwest and gained more than 2,000 new acres overnight. And the Fairview fire is burning just 2 miles to the northeast, through timber and grass, with active evacuations in effect. All 3 fires have mandatory evacuation orders, area closures, and road and trail closures in place this morning. So if you're one of those residents and you've been given an order to go, please go now. Do not wait for the flames to be visible from your window. Do not risk your life trying to save your property, because a house can be rebuilt and you cannot. And here's a detail that shows you just how stretched the system is. A single incident management team, California Team 7, is handling the Old Trails fire while also managing both Meadowview and Fairview. 3 major fires, 1 team. That's not a choice anyone would make in a normal year. It's what happens when the entire country is on fire at once and there simply aren't enough teams to go around. But there's a development out of Spokane that broke overnight and completely changes the story of one of these fires, because it turns out the largest of the 3 may not have been an accident at all. The Spokane County Sheriff announced the arrest of a 37-year-old man named Aaron Farinacci. He's been charged with first-degree arson in connection with the Old Trails fire, the biggest of the 3 surrounding the city. According to the sheriff, a private citizen called police after seeing Farinacci kneeling down near the grass at the exact spot where the fire started. When officers located him, he was carrying waterproof matches and a butane lighter. Investigators confirmed that the physical evidence at the ignition point was consistent with a fire started by a match or lighter. And here's the detail that adds a chilling layer to it. According to the sheriff, Farinacci is a convicted felon, previously convicted of manslaughter in Arizona, and he's now being held on a $1 million bond. Now, to be fair and accurate, investigators have not connected him to the Meadowview or Fairview fires. The causes of those 2 remain under investigation. But the idea that a disaster that displaced tens of thousands of people and destroyed hundreds of homes may have been deliberately set by one person is a heavy thing to absorb. It makes me want to ask you directly, and I genuinely like your thoughts in the comments. When a wildfire like this is allegedly started on purpose, what do you think the punishment should actually be? Because I suspect a lot of you have strong feelings about that. Now let's move slightly north of Spokane because the Sinlahekin fire in Okanogan County is exploding in a way that's genuinely hard to believe. In a single 24-hour period overnight, it gained more than 29,000 acres, just one day. It now stands at nearly 103,000 acres and is only about 5% contained. The fire behavior includes wind-driven runs, torching, and spotting, and it's now threatening critical communication infrastructure. Evacuations and road and trail closures are all in effect. And the brutal reality is that the weather driving Sinlahekin's growth is not letting up in the next 24 hours. Hot, dry, unstable conditions are actually expanding across the inland northwest, which means this fire has every ingredient it needs to keep running. Now I want to talk about what I consider one of the most dangerous individual fires burning anywhere in the country right now, and that's the Little Giant Fire, about 30 miles northwest of Leavenworth, Washington. It's grown to nearly 60,000 acres and is at 0% containment. But it's the fire behavior report on this one that raises the hair on your neck. Crews are describing extreme fire behavior with uphill runs, crowning, and long-range spotting all at once. Let me quickly explain why that specific combination is so terrifying. Crowning means the fire has climbed up into the canopy and is burning through the very tops of the trees, which lets it move faster than crews on the ground can even track it. And long-range spotting means the fire is flinging burning embers far ahead of the main front, starting brand new fires way out in front of itself. Put those two together and you have a fire that is effectively leaping across the landscape. California Team 2 is assigned here, numerous structures are threatened, and the estimated cost so far is already north of $14 million and climbing fast. Now let's head south into Oregon, where the scale of these fires is almost hard to wrap your head around. The Big Grass Fire, over on the Bureau of Land Management's Vail District, has burned around 342,000 acres. Let me put that in human terms. That is nearly half the size of the entire state of Rhode Island consumed by a single fire. It gained another 5,500 acres just yesterday and remains only about 25% contained. Then there's the Roe Creek Complex southwest of the town of Fossil at nearly 324,000 acres and about 60% contained. This one is the most expensive wildfire in the entire Northwest right now, with suppression costs already around $49 million and 25 structures lost, with over less than 1,700 personnel assigned to it this morning alone. There's also the Coleman Creek Fire in the Burns District at around 274,000 acres, with wind-driven runs and energy infrastructure seriously threatened today. And the Kaiser Canyon Fire near Nispelem in Washington at 136,000 acres and 44% contained, where 44 structures have already been destroyed and more than $30 million has been spent. And here's where the forecast gets especially worrying, because meteorologists are flagging a specific high-risk corridor. That strengthening thermal trough I mentioned earlier is setting up dangerous fire conditions stretching from southwest Oregon all the way north to the Columbia River Gorge. That's a huge swath of terrain, including the Umpqua, Rogue River, and Willamette National Forests. So if you live anywhere along the Interstate 5 corridor through southern Oregon, you need to stay extremely alert today. There's already the Grasshopper Fire on Mount Hood National Forest at around 31,000 acres, with structures and critical infrastructure threatened. There's the Evans Creek Road Fire near Rogue River at about 15,000 acres, and there's a wildfire burning right beside Interstate 5 near Grants Pass. So if you're driving I-5 through that area today, please slow down, use extreme caution, and check road conditions before you go, because a highway with fire on its shoulder can shut down without warning. Now let's move east to the Great Basin, which is at Preparedness Level 4 this morning, with a dozen large uncontained fires and 3 critical management teams committed. And the fire behavior coming out of Utah and Nevada is genuinely alarming. 3 separate fires there are experiencing what managers officially call extreme fire behavior. The Widemouth 2 fire on Utah's Fish Lake National Forest is at 68,000 acres and 0 containment, with mandatory evacuations near the town of Kanosh, just a couple of miles from the fire's edge. The Ward Fire on Nevada's Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest, about 10 miles south of LA, along US 93, is showing crowning and wind-driven runs with critical infrastructure threatened. The Black Canyon Fire near Price, Utah, is smaller at around 800 acres but growing fast, and it's threatening power lines that serve communities across central Utah. And the Tartar Fire northwest of Weiser, Idaho, has reached 107,000 acres at just 13% contained. And I have to point out one thing that captures how these conditions work. The Antelope Creek fire in the Elko district of Nevada jumped nearly 4,700 acres overnight and found brand new energy. So even fires that look like they're winding down are roaring back to life in this heat. Up in the northern Rockies, it's preparedness level 4 as well, with 13 large uncontained fires across Montana and Idaho. The Skillet Fire on the Flathead National Forest is growing rapidly and threatening railroad infrastructure. The Uppersmith Fire in Idaho's Panhandle, right near the Canadian border, is at around 2,300 acres, but has already cost over $20 million, making it one of the costliest in the state relative to its size. And 6 new fires were reported there just yesterday. There's a sliver of good news here, though. Cooler than average temperatures are offering a little relief in the northern Rockies today, even if the low humidity still supports active spread. Down in the Rocky Mountain region, centered on Colorado and Wyoming, we find the single most expensive wildfire in America right now. The Aspen Acres Fire in Custer County, Colorado, about 20 miles southwest of Pueblo along the I-25 corridor, has burned nearly 102,000 acres and is now 71% contained. But here is the number that will stay with you. 915 structures lost. 915 homes and buildings gone in one county, with suppression costs around $95 million, the highest in the nation. For a community that size, that is simply devastating. There's also the Rio Blanco Fire south of Pagosa Springs, with numerous structures threatened, and the Gold Mountain Fire on the Grand Mesa, the second most expensive in Colorado. And there's a wrinkle in the forecast for this region worth flagging. Isolated thunderstorms are possible over the Rockies later this week, and some of those may be dry thunderstorms, meaning lightning with no rain. Dry lightning striking into critically dry fuel is one of the most efficient ways to start brand new fires. So even as everyone prays for rain, the sky itself may light more fires than it puts out. And here's something that shows just how far this crisis has spread beyond the West. It's reached the upper Midwest. 5 simultaneous wildfires are burning in Minnesota, all within the Boundary Waters area of the Superior National Forest, being managed by a single Type 1 team. The largest, the Bear Trap Fire, is at nearly 30,000 acres and 40% contained, with over $19 million spent in evacuations near Ely, Minnesota. The eastern part of the country is actually cooler than average, but a drought has left the forest fuels critically dry, so the fire finds a way regardless. And of course, California's fire season is fully underway too. 21 new fires were reported in Southern California just yesterday, the most of any region. There's the brand new Gann Fire near Valley Springs, showing uphill runs and long-range spotting, and several others in San Bernardino County that are now nearly contained. But the California forecast is a warning in itself. Extreme heat persisting across the interior valleys, humidity down in that 3 to 15% range, temperatures over 100 degrees. Those are essentially Santa Ana level fire conditions, the kind that historically produce California's worst infernos. Now, let me step back and show you the aerial and international response, because it puts the sheer scale of all this into perspective. Military C-130 air tankers, outfitted with modular airborne firefighting systems, are now deployed and integrated into wildfire operations, with aircraft from the Colorado, Wyoming, and California Air National Guard units flying missions. When you're pulling military aircraft into domestic firefighting, that alone tells you how serious the situation has become. And then there's the international piece, which is genuinely historic. A 15-member incident management team from Australia and New Zealand is assigned to fires in the Northwest, along with dozens more fireline personnel from those countries working shoulder to shoulder with American crews. Now, the United States does have long-standing resource-sharing agreements with Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and South Africa, so this isn't unprecedented in principle. But activating those agreements at this scale, in early August, at the peak of our own fire season, reflects an extraordinary level of demand. We are, quite literally, borrowing firefighters from the opposite hemisphere. So what does the extended forecast tell us? Honestly, it tells us the weather is not about to cooperate. Hot, dry, unstable conditions are expanding across the Pacific Northwest. That high-risk corridor through the Oregon Cascades is intensifying, and the Great Basin is looking at lingering wind plus extreme heat. There's a little hope of helpful wet thunderstorms in southeastern Arizona and southwestern New Mexico, and the East Coast is getting plenty of rain. But all of that moisture is locked east of the Mississippi and is doing absolutely nothing for the burning West. The bottom line is blunt. There is no significant relief on the horizon for fire country. The heat dome baking the interior West shows no sign of breaking soon. And with fuels already critically dry from a dry winter and spring, every single additional day of heat and low humidity is another day of potential extreme fire growth. The fire environment right now is about as bad as it physically gets. So let me give you the action items that actually matter if you live in any of these regions, because this is the part that can genuinely save your life. First, Know your evacuation zone and look it up today before you ever need it, because when these fires move, you may get almost no warning. Second, sign up for your county's emergency alert system right now. Every county in the West has one. Third, if you keep a go bag, make sure it's packed and by the door. Documents, medications, water, a phone charger ready to grab. Fourth, if you are under an evacuation order, leave immediately, because firefighters cannot protect you if you choose to stay behind. And don't forget about the air itself. Smoke is impacting communities far, far from the actual flames across the entire western U.S. So check a real-time air quality site before heading outside. And if you've got kids, elderly family, or anyone with asthma or heart conditions, keep them indoors. And if you're traveling, check the 511 road systems in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado before you drive, because a road that's open this morning can be closed by this afternoon. Now, I don't want to leave you with nothing but darkness, because there is some encouraging progress worth naming. Several fires have turned a corner. The Hat Fire in Oregon's Vail District is at 99% contained. The Hay Creek Complex near Prineville is at 97%. The Anthony Fire is at 89% and transferring back to local management. And a few others are being handed back to local control today, so progress is real. It's just painfully, agonizingly slow when you weigh it against the sheer volume of what's still burning completely out of control. Let me put the cost of all this into perspective before I wrap up. Just from the fires in today's national report alone, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in suppression costs. $95 million on Aspen Acres in Colorado, $49 million on Roe Creek in Oregon. And these are only the firefighting costs. They don't begin to count the economic devastation to the communities, the homes, the businesses, and the infrastructure that have been lost. And remember, we are sitting at 138% of the 10-year average, with more than 2 full months of fire season still ahead of us. This is shaping up to be one of the most significant wildfire seasons in modern American history. And the hard truth is that it is nowhere near over. This is a fast-moving, developing situation across a dozen regions at once, and I'll keep updating you as the conditions evolve. If you live in one of these areas, please take fire preparedness seriously, because this is genuinely not a drill. And let me leave you with this thought. We tend to picture wildfires as a local tragedy, one town, one canyon, one bad night. But what we're actually watching right now is something far bigger, an entire continent's worth of fire burning at the same time, straining a national system to the point where we're flying in help from the other side of the world. That's the real story here. Not any single fire, but all of them together at once. If this gave you a clear, honest picture of what's really happening out there, do me a favor and hit that like button, because it truly helps this kind of no-hype coverage reach more people who need it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the daily updates, because these numbers are going to keep moving. And drop a comment to let me know how the fire or the smoke is affecting your area right now, because I read them, and hearing from people on the ground genuinely shapes what I cover next. Stay safe out there, stay ready, and I'll see you in the next one.